supply with e-teams, that one surely, that is just killing them. The other one of putting more costs, VAT and excise duty going up on banking services, that makes banking more expensive. So it just pushes you away from it. It pushes you from even going for credit for the financial institutions, because every time you have that transaction, it's cooling your money. Is there any good thing?
Yes, there are a number of good things that we welcome as the private sector. One of them is actually making some of the deductions tax allowable. For example, the social health, the affordable housing, the deductions. So that's going to ease. It's going to ease the disposable income for citizens, for employees.
But those were allowed even in the current existing finance act, isn't it?
No, remember there was a component where they were charging gross. For example, even the social health, where it was a certain percentage of the gross salary. So at least now it will be deducted after the payee is priced in.
Okay.
So that's going to ease a little bit of the burden. We're also seeing the advance price agreements, which is very important for businesses, particularly who do trade across the different countries and have subsidiaries. So the advanced price agreements is going to shield businesses from the annual price audits that the Revenue Authority does, puts in a bit of stability on that front. But even just going back a little bit on that point of VAT on banking services, for small businesses, so essentially what it means is that VAT will be applied when you're taking a loan, because it's advances or credit, which is essentially a loan. Now, as a bank, what do I do? Because in the event that there's a default, and currently across the market, it's about 15% of all loans that are issued are defaulted, right? I will then not be able to recover these particular tax that I might pay up front. So what happens? Then maybe I am incentivized to lend more to people who have collateral. So I do more of secured lending than unsecured. Now the question then becomes, who are the people with collateral? Do MSMEs have collateral? They don't have collateral. Majority of them don't have collateral. So then that affects MSMEs.
So you're locking them out of the credit market.
Absolutely.
Okay. The question that we had asked Eric Kennedy from EABL in the previous hour is, for a long time, people have been advocating for a predictable tax regime in the country and saying, can we have a tax policy that anybody can look at and see, so this is the tax policy for the country for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, whatever period, but then it's something predictable. And in this country, what we see is that every new budget policy appears to be that tax policy as well. What's the impact of that?
So the impact of that, Eric, is allow me to demonstrate to you. At the Chamber of Commerce, we do a lot of trade missions, both inbound and outbound, where we go to other countries. We look for business opportunities for our members, and other chambers of commerce and our counterparts come in with businesses, business people, and investors alike. Now, more often we are hearing that the concern about the predictability of our tax regime from international investors. So that is limiting our FDIs. And even at the local level, in the barometer report that I mentioned earlier, we asked businesses, what are some of the issues that would affect your performance in the second quarter? And the stability of the regulatory environment came in second, after shortage of financial resources. I was telling you the environment that we are in currently. So you find that locally businesses are shying away from a lot of long-time investments, particularly in some sectors like manufacturing, even gambling and betting, because they just don't know what's going to happen next. So this is really, it's taken away from our economy. There's a lot we could unlock by having a tax policy that would guide the introduction of new taxes and the amendment of the current tax laws. And this particular Finance Bill 2024 also has some of the aspects of unpredictability,
How?
which actually erodes some of the good things that are in the bill. Now, first, there is the digital service tax, which was introduced, which came into effect in 2021. So that's about, give or take, about 40 months that it's been implemented, which in business sense, it's really quite short. I mean, close to medium term. You haven't even recovered your capital by then. So that has been changed. They're changing the name of that tax. And what they're doing is now that they're saying that they're going to tax 20% of your gross income, and they're going to apply 30% tax on it. So effectively, it's 6%. That is the effective rate. And what was the initial DST that people are currently paying? They're paying 1.5%. So that's a 300% hike from 1% to 6%. So in just 3 years of a tax being in place, the name has changed.
What is
and
it
it
now?
has gone up by 300%. So
what is it going to be called now from digital services tax?
I think it's something scheme, something contribution. I haven't gotten the name quite right. So you
But
see
the
that,
impact of it is that
yeah, if you're an
people who
investor,
are in the digital services
Exactly.
industry,
yeah,
and now this also expands into you are doing ride-hailing apps, you are
Yeah.
doing delivery apps, you
Correct.
are running your own social media account.
yeah,
All of you are lumped together,
absolutely.
and
you
you pay 6%.
Yeah, you're going to pay 6% now. That's the effective rate of your income. And what happens is that the challenge with this is that investors make projections about what's going to be their return, when will they recoup their return. I mean, that's really the basis of any investment. If you sit in an investment committee, those are the hard questions that are asked. If for example, you also look at the IDF, import declaration fee, since 2016, it's been dancing between 2% to 3.5%. And this current proposal, it proposes that it's changed from the current 2.5% to 3.5%. Now, I have looked at some investors who have invested in Kenya. I've interacted with a number of them, and I was just looking at their investment models, and some of them play with a safe rate of 5%. IDF, because they just don't know.
You just don't know where it will be.
Yeah, what they will
If
put
it's
as the next
2.5%
one.
at least.
Exactly. And I mean, just looking at the conversation that you're having with EABL, and even if you are a manufacturer, just look at the last couple of finance bills. First, you've had to contend with remitting excise 24 hours after the products have left your stockroom. Invoices are honored after 30 days or 60 or even 120, 90.
Yeah.
So you obviously don't have money there. So what do? You have to go to a financial institutions and seek credit to be able to do that. Now, they are not going to give you money for free. So there's a cost component there, which you transfer to the consumer, or you absorb it. Now, this proposal again says that you now pay in 5 days. But it's it's actually inconsequential, and I'll demonstrate to you why. So,
what exactly is inconsequential?
The proposal of moving it now, you remit excise, not 24 hours, but
5
then
days.
5 working days. Exactly. So the reason why it's inconsequential is, see, it's 5 working days. Okay, so let's say 7 days. See, to work a weekend.
Okay.
Now, if it comes in on the first day of July, it's 1st of July. When are you supposed to remit excise for the products that have left?
5th.
No, so that it will be 8th now,
Okay.
because 7 days.
Okay.
So the one for Tarembili, you will pay it in 9th.
So
Then as soon as it gets to
every
to
day you
are
still have
back
a 24
to 24 hours. And that's why some of these things I believe Kenyans, we should really be aware about them, because the conversation can be quite a lot about bread. But if you look at, this is a very cheeky proposal, because it actually doesn't change anything.
But there's logic behind this. It's just that it escapes me. Yes,
there must be
there
logic.
has to be logic behind this. What is this need for this immediacy of payment?
Now, so I have talked to my members who are mostly manufacturers, and they've mentioned to me that what they've heard from government is that the inspiration was, and let me use the example of alcohol and beverage, is that let people remit money in 24 hours quickly, so that it does not give them space to do counterfeit products. Now, this actually doesn't make sense. I see how
doesn't give
Charles
who
is looking
space?
at me. Yes, because the inspiration from government was that if people remit excise tax quickly and almost immediately, then they cannot be able to have any allowances to go around and
So
produce some things that
the thinking of the treasury was that I am
Exactly.
manufacturing these two alcoholic beverages.
Yes.
I take them in the market, then I'll only declare this one.
correct.
The other one will be sold in the market, but maybe in a
Yes.
different
So
name.
this other one will be sold
Chini.
as counterfeit.
So I'll only declare that I
and
manufactured
I think
one.
they didn't think about the fact that people don't get paid immediately. Wait.
Yes, but is there any credibility to that thinking?
Absolutely not.
Was it not observation that they have observed and seen? There's no way you're telling me that these guys are only manufacturing X. Maybe they're manufacturing X plus 10, but only declaring the X. And the 10 goes in as grey products. And we can now lump it up and say, these are counterfeits, these are illicits, and it's these other people who are selling. But it's you who manufactured and took it to the market.
So let me tell you why that is not the case.
Okay.
If you're a manufacturer, one of your biggest enemies, in fact, your sworn enemies, are people who sell counterfeit. For example, if you look at the cigarette market, about 25 to 30% of the products that are in the country are actually counterfeit. And these counterfeit are manufactured.
I'm going to ask you the same question I asked earlier.
Correct.
Counterfeit means what exactly?
Okay, yes. So counterfeit means a number of things. One, it's not produced by the person who it's written it's produced by.
Okay.
And it could come from, Eric mentioned the issue of porous borders. So it could be produced somewhere else, and then it's brought into the country through the porous borders. And there are some techniques. You've heard about Outer Ring Road and Kariobangi Light Industries, where products actually look, you can't even make a distinction unless maybe you take it to the laboratory.
Yeah.
So the manufacturers, their sworn enemies are counterfeit people because they're stealing their market share.
Okay, but let me ask the question. For these illicit products to actually be accepted into the market, it means that they do offer something that the consumer approves of or likes.
I can speak to only one aspect of that. It offers a cheaper price.
Yes.
And it offers a cheaper price because they obviously they're not tax compliant. But then now, whose burden is it? So I am a manufacturer and I pay all these taxes. In fact, now I'm remitting 24 hours even before I'm paid. I'm having to borrow so that I pay. I mean, the government has the obligation because you're collecting my taxes. Why don't you put in efforts to address this counterfeit and illicit stuff, because it is making you lose revenue? Remember?
Yeah.
Because they're not paying taxes.
I see. We are, in this discussion, there seems to be an underlying assumption that the enactment and the practice that we speak of is conducted by people who are outside government or by people who have connections within government. You can't talk about a growing enterprise that is outside the law and you claim for a single second that the law does not know about it. That's why I asked about the benefit and those who benefit from it, because if the benefit is large enough, then that web will cover very many individuals, of course at the cost of the government.
Absolutely. And the challenge with counterfeits really is that, as you've rightly put it, CT, the government knows. These rogue players are more often than not arrested multiple times.
Yeah.
So we urge the government that, in fact, you're not doing this for us as the private sector. You're also doing it for yourself, because you're getting revenue. You're incentivized to do that. So it beats logic when the government doesn't pursue rogue players, illicit players with a lot of rigor as they should.
Do you think those rogue players have legs and arms and heads in government?
Yes.
So when all of us are saying
that's
the government,
the existence, yes.
the government wants to collect, not everybody who is saying that the government wants to collect actually means government. They mean themselves. They consider themselves to be the government. So they could be influencing, some of these, measures so that they can benefit. Come up with something, influence it somewhere where iki tuongeza nini sema wanaiba sana niweka. So that then you give yourself an avenue to do business. The market, there is demand in the market. Is there demand in the market for alcoholic beverages? Yes, there is. So if I remove these other guys and I create some confusion, I have direct access to the market.
Absolutely. You're right, Eric. And the challenge here becomes if you look at section 14 that your namesake Eric mentioned about them not being able to offset the excise that is paid for raw materials with the one of the finished products. Like the intention, it's a very foul intention, because what it does, as he demonstrated, is it raises the prices of products. Now, if it raises the prices of products, then as CT put it, there is a way for illicit products because they'll be cheaper. Now, what are we doing to our economy? If I am an investor and I want to make an investment into the economy, and I look at, for example, the cigarette market, the formal good lines, they only have 65-70% of the market share, because all the other ones are counterfeit. So if that share of counterfeit and illicit increases, then am I really going to make an investment decision as an investor?
No.
Absolutely not.
There seems to me that policies or suggestions of policies such as the ones we are discussing now, these things which don't seem to make sense to us make sense to other people.
Yeah.
And when we talk about government losing money, it is clear to me there are people who don't really give a hoot whether the government loses money or not. Because clearly someone is gaining. There's no question about it. And clearly the government is not gaining as much as it could. That is to put it as politely as I possibly can. Okay. But it also tells me that so long as such bills keep being proposed, so long as we keep hearing this thing being proposed and they're not spoken of with clarity and spoken of loudly and consistently, then it will continue. Because we were talking about this with Eric a while back. In fact, it's something we talk about every day. The activities around the tax regime in this country defies the very logic that government seems to put across about enhancing growth. It defies it completely. So you have to ask, okay, why are you preaching water and drinking wine?
That is true. You've had the government's commitment to improve, to increase the contribution of manufacturing to GDP from the current 7-8% to 15% by 2027. But then at the same time, your section 14 that is going to really dismantle manufacturers by not allowing them to offset. So they're contradicting. And I mean, City, you make a good point that there are some people in government who they don't care about revenue collection. And I mean, at such a time when we have debt obligations, we really should be very careful about our revenue. And for us as the private sector, our intention is we also want the country to do good. Because if the country does well, then our businesses do well. If the country doesn't do well and the economy is bad and people are broke, then who's going to be the customers that we serve? There won't be any customers.
You know, if one is given to nefarious activities, and my focus here is on theft, isn't it more in your interest to steal from a much bigger treasury than a smaller one? Because there's a lot more to steal.
That is true. You are assuming that these thieves are long-term investors. Is it that would be an investor? Invest in time so that this thing grows. So by the time it grows, if he's a now guy, he's walking like this. He finds clothes hanging on the clothesline. pick the
even if they are wet.
Even if they're wet.
Leo ni best.
Yes.
Yes.
Right?
You know,
I saw someone saying yesterday that a clever cat does not eat a pregnant rat.
Yes.
Can look at it and say, panya iko na mimba.
Imemanufacture chakula ingine hapa.
Wacha tungoje. Izae kwanza. The cats we have in Kenya, rat, pregnant, fat, eat.
I mean, I would not want to agree with City about stealing in a bigger or smaller treasury. I think they shouldn't be stealing either way. But I think there is something that can be done. So at the end of the day, I know the finance bill can be quite complex to a lot of people, but we have the blessing, and maybe City might not agree with me, but we have the blessing of legislators.
Sorry?
Represent us.
We have the what?
We have the blessings. You look at me like you're about to call it a curse.
No. How is this blessing manifest?